I'm going to start with a sports question, if that's okay. What are your thoughts on the entire idea of a draft? NBA, MLB, NHL, what have you. I understand that this is a Kurt Floodism where he should absolutely be in the Hall of Fame, but he led to players picking where they could go. Considering your background, how do you feel about the draft model overall?
Well, for me, it has all kinds of really troubling associations with slavery. I mean, there is something uh, amiss in a procedure in which you allow, as our laws do, for entities like baseball clubs or other sports teams to literally buy and sell human beings. I don't think that should have been done. I don't understand why it was necessary to do it. I don't think the arguments were at all persuasive. And I think that much of what has happened since you did that have been efforts to limit the damage, efforts to offset some of the unintended, I hope they were unintended consequences. But for me, it is a strange way to organize a national sport or national sports. I take sports very seriously. I think it's a very important part of social life, but I, I do not understand the compulsion in this country to organize it as a money making, profit maximizing business. I don't think that's healthy. And the different parts of that strike me as compromised by that basic reality.
How is it compromised?
It makes the calculation one of what's the best profit outcome here for us? What is the way? Who do we hire? How do we organize? How do we change the rules of the baseball game or the football game? And the answer, which could be and should be done on the grounds of some intrinsic notion of what is sportsmanlike in the old sense of that word without the gender implications. But what is the appropriate thing to do for the integrity of this sport instead is shoved aside, given lip service, and then the decision is made how many more seats can we sell? How many improvements in our TV contracts can we get? If we hire this one, not that one. If we change the rule this way, not that way. If the bat should be able to hit more home runs, less home. What are you doing? What is it you're focused on is a fundamental mistake in my judgment, and it means that sports is subordinated to the money making operations, and I don't think that's healthy at all. And I think it drives sports away from what, in my judgment, it was always meant to be.
So, piggybacking off of that, the look, I'm a Chicagoan, love the Cubs. The home run race between Sammy Sosa and Mark McGuire, and it's been widely reported the allowance of steroid use in Major League Baseball. What you're saying is they allowed players to juice up in order to bring more attention, more revenue, more dollars to the league, and ultimately, obviously, in going forward with that, more eyeballs and more of the media companies talking about this race to who could break Roger Maris's record.
Right. And so I mean I could spend a long time, but let me give you some examples of why that really troubles me as a way of thinking. Um, the human body is an extraordinarily complicated and beautiful object. Human beings admire, a beautiful body for a whole host of reasons. And watching a body that is in good shape, that has developed its ability to run or jump or throw or a hundred other things is a beautiful display. But it should celebrate that we all have in us parts of that, maybe not as well developed as that sports figure or that one, and we admire all of that, but that there is a linkage between them and us. We all have two arms, two legs, a nose, a back, the ability to throw a ball and catch a ball. And there's a link between that and the one who's really good at it, unless the one who's really good at it becomes something other than a human being, somebody on some artificial drug that makes the blood flow in this way rather than that, that drives the distance or maximizes the distance between us and them. And why in the world would we do that? What's the gain in all of that? Are we really interested in watching people who have artificially enhanced their bodies do all kinds of things? And if you really buy that, where does it stop? Are we going to insert pins in people's hips because then they could swivel better, or then they could change the way their arms work so that the ball can be thrown a few further yards? Where in the end does it stop? And the answer is we don't know, because the history of baseball has been, among other things, the history of discovery of the vast array of substances that have in fact been used, are being developed in laboratories to be used. I don't want any of that. I don't find that edifying at all. I think it makes the youngster who is supposed to be inspired by athletic prowess instead develop the idea, I can never do that. I can never do that. Or the conscientious one who's smart enough to realize that in order to do what that athlete did, you have to compromise your body by taking into it substances whose long term effects on you either aren't known or are considered to be highly likely to be damaging. Why are we doing all of it? The answer is always the same, because it's more money. When you ask, more eyeballs, I see it slightly differently. I see it as hustling. It's the same hustling I see in academia, or I see in the world of journalism, because I'm active in those areas. I know what goes into the minds of headline writers for our newspapers. And what goes in is what they've been told by the sales department over on the other side of the building. We want headlines that will get people to buy this newspaper. We want controversy. We want excitement. We want sex. We want murder. And that's what we get. And our culture is shaped by what we put up there, just like our culture is shaped by the way we identify what makes you a hero if you're an athlete, which in our culture, and a lot of my students already believe it. And look, what I'm going to tell them, they're right, which is you're outstanding not because of your skill, not because of your training, not because you take substances, lots of them, even ones that other people don't know about. And that's the cleverest thing of all, because that could maybe give you that special extra. And then when people do something, athletes do something remarkable, and you see it or you appreciate it, 2 minutes later, out of your mouth comes the wonderment. And what chemical did that uh, require? And the whole attitude then becomes one that really takes, in my judgment, takes away from what sports ought to be. I don't understand why you would do that. And there's another one which is really bad for young kids, which I've noticed, which is for them, there's almost this notion, I can't do what that athlete does. I just can't. And I'm not going to spend time playing in my elementary school team or my middle school or my high school or my college. I'm not up to that. I don't want to get involved in all the chemistry and the drugs and all that. I don't want to do all of that. and I'm not capable otherwise. It's not for us. And then you get the dichotomy between the playing of a sport and the spectator of a sport. And you know better than I that we're a culture that specializes in spectator and does very little in participation and playing. In my college, when I went to college, I played on the intramural team of my dormitory, and it was a very active program. I played all the seasons. I played baseball, I played basketball, I played football, and I loved it. We didn't put on heavy outfits. We didn't have referees, but we had a wonderful, good time. And so I learned a few years ago when I went back and talked with my classmates that one of the things that made all of us sad was that the intramural program in sports had died out. And when I asked, well, gee, why did that happen? And I was told nobody wants to play. Nobody wants to play. For me, it was an important part of college. And I don't think it was just, because I was a young man and I had to, get my juices flowing, I had to expend energy or, yeah, I mean, there's a grain of truth to that. I know that. But no, it was a way to get to know my dorm mates in a way I couldn't, no other way was available. We learned about each other's athletic skills that we didn't know we had. It made me like Fred a bit more because he really knew how to throw the ball, et cetera, et cetera. All of that's gone. All of that's gone. And what you're left with is a bunch of guys with too much weight, spending too much time spectating and putting on that weight.
I'm saddened to hear that because when I went to Indiana University, they also offered intramurals. I haven't checked in on if they still have it, but I'm very saddened to hear that.
Yeah, no, it is. Ask them.
I will.
I'd be interested to know whether that was isolated in my particular school or whether it was general. I don't know enough to know whether it was, but I doubt my place was all that different from most others.